What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. It's a Next Pats Spooktacular on Halloween. We have a massive episode for you this week. We're bringing in our great buddy, James Palmer of the Athletics Scoop City podcast, of Bleacher Report. He does the 89 show with Steve Smith, where they're talking about the league's receivers, who's performing and who is not. He's going to tell us all about what he's hearing, not only about Drake Maye and his development, but also the NFL trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. What should and what will the Patriots be doing? It's a fantastic conversation. But before we launch into that, let's talk a little bit about just how effective this guy over my right shoulder, Drake Maye, rocking a Pokemon costume at a Halloween party earlier this week at Gillette Stadium, how effective he has been with the deep ball. One of the best quarterbacks in football, we know that to this point. The first half MVP, in my opinion, to this point. But especially on throws 20 yards or more down the field, he has been spectacular. We're talking a nearly perfect quarterback rating of 157.5 on passes that travel 20 yards or more down the field, and no quarterback has generated more expected points added per dropback than Drake Maye has on those types of throws. Another reason he's been one of the best in football, though, with those types of throws, Kayshon Boutte. It is not an exaggeration to call this one of the most explosive duos in the NFL to this point in the year. Boutte ranks second among 77 qualifying receivers with 18.7 yards per catch this year. And with 195 yards and 5 touchdowns on 30 targets, his EPA per target is number 1 in the NFL, but especially on those deep throws. No receiver in the league with 5 or more deep targets has a better catch percentage than Boutte. 85.7% of the time he sees those types of targets, he reels it in. And only Seattle's Jackson Smith-Njigba has more yards per route run than Boutte does on deep throws. I asked Drake Maye earlier this week just why he trusts Kayshon Boutte as much as he does. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, it starts with the guys up front, trusting those guys. I think they, know in the huddle, based on the call, some of the same words are showing up for deep shots, and the offensive line gets excited. So, makes them want to block, makes them want to, hold in and, be good up front. And then those guys down the field, they're just, worried about the details and knowing that, one-on-one is open. And I keep on telling them, going to give you a chance to go make a play, and they keep on, making plays and building trust every week. So that trust isn't going to change. And I threw one out of bounds to Boutte last week, so I got to do my part and keep on giving him a chance.
Had the opportunity to talk to Kayshon Boutte as well about this connection that he clearly has right now with his quarterback, and he said, quote, "We work on it every day. I mean, y'all in the media are only out there for a little bit, but we're out there for 2 hours. We work on it every day. He trusts that I'm going to be to a spot, and I trust that he's going to throw it. When you constantly show up for a quarterback, you build trust. Just catching most of the things that he throws to you, he's going to keep throwing it." Let's see if these two are going to be able to keep that connection going this weekend against the Atlanta Falcons. One of the strengths of this Falcons defense, defending against the deep ball. They rank at the top of the league in EPA allowed per deep pass attempt, and they're the third best deep ball defense when it comes to yards per attempt. So a great matchup, strength on strength right there. What does James Palmer think about Drake Maye's effectiveness through the first half of his second season? What does he think about how well he's been throwing the deep ball, specifically to Kayshon Boutte? And how about that trade deadline? Let's get to our conversation now with James Palmer. There he is. There's our good friend, James Palmer. James, thank you so much for being back with us on Next Pats, my friend.
Always, brother, always.
Hey, we've got a lot to talk about here because the Patriots, they are much better than anyone anticipated, it seems. 6-2, second in the conference, first in the division somehow, and yet we know how. It's been Drake Maye. Drake Maye has been the engine driving this thing. How surprised have you been by his start to his second season in a new system, or are you surprised at all, James?
I'm surprised. I really am. I think the biggest thing that jumps out at me is I remember talking to a bunch of scouts I know, Phil, after that pro day, and they were like, a couple of these balls, like, this isn't a guy you pick at the top of the draft. This accuracy is a little bit of a question mark for me. And what I look at is you fast forward to this season, and I've talked to some people in New England about this because I was so fascinated by the change of accuracy and what's been done there to have completing 75% of your balls is just nuts. And a lot of it, I'm told, is the way they're setting him up to succeed. It's the way certain routes are being run by the specific player that they're running them. So they're throws that Drake knows really well, but also they have an offensive system that's good enough to make sure it's not overly predictable. And then they keep moving him along. I think this relationship between Josh McDaniels and Drake Maye should be one of the most talked about marriages in the NFL. It really should, because of the way that they keep adding to it. And they kept, we're not going to have you turn your back and run the play action early in the season, but we're going to keep moving that along. We're going to keep adding these different aspects to the way we use this offense, and we're going to keep making you feel comfortable, but allow you to take those shots downfield, which that also, to my understanding, falls a lot on Drake and these receivers spending a lot of time repping those things together. But the way that the behind-the-scenes aspect has worked to where Josh can go to Drake and go, I did this with Brady. I did this, and this worked. And there's an aspect of it I was told that was kind of, maybe it won't be the first thing that come to mind, Phil. It's that Drake looks at him and goes, wait, you think that highly of me? That, yeah, you did that with Tom. You want to do that with me? Let's go. There's the pelt on the wall there that has Drake kind of thinking in a manner to allow that to come to fruition on Sunday. So I think the way that they've worked with him has been outstanding. Obviously, he's made the plays, so he's been brilliant too. And a big chunk of it was without the run game. And I know they want that to get going, and it's starting to a little bit. I feel like this is just the start with the way he's playing. It's been outstanding, and I think it shows you the importance of a really good, experienced play caller having the time and the pelts on the wall to be with your young quarterback. It's paramount to success in this league.
Yeah, it looks like there's just such an incredible level of buy-in from Drake Maye on everything that's been put on his plate by Josh McDaniels, and it all feels so natural. I think that's been maybe the most impressive part of his start to the season for me, is that there's very few moments where he looks like he's overthinking or he looks like he's at all robotic out there. And I thought that might be an issue. Josh McDaniels has this reputation, of putting a lot on the quarterback's plate, right? And it looked like in week one, it looked like maybe there was too much on his plate. But since then, minus a hiccup against the Steelers, he has been lights out, especially down the field. As you mentioned, is it sustainable, though, James? Not only Drake Maye's play, but their record and the pace that they're on as a football team right now. We know they have a relatively easy schedule, and so maybe that will contribute to your answer. But are we going to be looking at this team by the end of the season and saying they just won the AFC East?
I mean, I think because of the schedule, that's definitely sustainable, and you already took one from Buffalo. But I do think, with the way Drake is playing, is this going to continue for the duration of the season, Phil? That would be remarkable. Right now, he has 7 consecutive games of over 200 passing yards and over 100 passer rating. Every other quarterback that has had a stretch like that in a season has won the MVP. All of them. So does he continue to play like an MVP quarterback in year 2? He's already exceeded expectations, but does he carry this team through the stretches where it's different when you don't run the ball against certain teams, but when you're playing other teams later in the season and you're playing really good defenses, you have to be able to run the football. And Travion Henderson hasn't come along the way that they have envisioned it. And my understanding is there's some things that he has to grow as a player with the ball outside of his hands, I'm told, to make sure that he takes another step. And you look at the receiving core and you're like, it's not a murderer's row of pass catchers there. But I talked to somebody in the league that was like, that might be benefiting Drake's growth, is that no player has to be fed the football. There's no place he has to look. He gets to play within the constructs of the system. But is this sustainable offensively, the way that they're playing? I think the schedule plays a part of it. But right now, with the games he's strung together, like I mentioned, you have to think he's still going to play at a very high level at least. And then we'll see. We'll see. Tuesday may play a big part in it, honestly.
Well, and that leads us perfectly. What a professional you are. Leads us perfectly into our trick or treat segment. It is Halloween. We do want to talk about the trade deadline. We have to pick your brain and the breadth of knowledge that you have about the National Football League. And so what we will do in this segment, I'll pose you trick or treat. I will read you a statement, and you will tell me, is that a trick? Is that false? Do you not believe that? Do you not like where that is going? Or is that a treat? Is that something that you could see playing out? So the first question I'm going to ask you, more of a broad-based question, and this is league-wide. It does seem as though, James, that the league has gotten more comfortable with making trades around this time of year. So, trick or treat, this deadline will be splashier than last year's. Remember, we saw in October, we saw guys like Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Cam Robinson, a starting tackle, all get dealt and more. Will this year be even splashier than 2024?
I will say that is a trick, Phil. I don't think it's going to be splashier. Now, obviously, Sunday plays a big part, to my understanding, about some of these games. Let's use Kansas City and Buffalo as a direct example. If you see James Cook run all over the Chiefs, and they're already looking at help on their front seven in the defense in Kansas City, does that make Brett Veach more aggressive? If that game goes and flips the other way, and Brandon Beane there in Buffalo just realizes, man, our issue on a boundary receiver is even greater than we thought. Our quarterback has been kind of dodging the question. And yes, he is right. We don't have any sort of threat outside. I need to be aggressive like I was last year. Trade you didn't even mention was Amari Cooper. They gave up a third for Amari Cooper last year, and it didn't work out. And that plays a part into me saying that this is a bit of a trick. Talking to people around the league, Phil, it's a little bit of buyer's remorse from last year. The trades you mentioned, a lot of them didn't work out. The Devontae Adams one didn't really work out. The Amari Cooper one didn't really work out. And is there teams out there going, man, for a receiver, I got to give up a third-round pick? That's pretty good capital. In today's NFL, that's a starter, certainly. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a hesitation. I think there's needy teams that are contenders. I don't know that there's enough players out there that they really want to give up that type of compensation for to move the meter. Now, again, Sunday could change that for the course of several teams. But right now, unless the entire league is lying to me, it seems like it's going to be relatively quiet. But again, I could be a liar, but that's the way it seems right now.
Okay, well, let's drill down specifically on the Patriots then, because even if they lose, win or lose, they're still going to be in the postseason mix here. And if they want to try to make this thing sustainable, should they not be adding at the deadline? So, trick or treat, the Patriots will be buyers.
Well, that's a treat. That's a treat. I think the Patriots will be buyers. I do. I look at. There's a few things that make me think that. One, the numbers just came out from the league yesterday in terms of cap space. They got $48.97 million. That's a lot of cheddar there. You could work with some things. I do think, though, Phil, they're going, okay, maybe we've exceeded expectations quicker than we assumed, maybe than some people assumed, but we don't want to rent anybody. Anybody we're bringing in, we'd like to make sure they're an impact player maybe for us in 2026 as well, or perhaps past that. And I think that might be what they're looking at. I think they are looking at pass rushers. I think you could look at a piece in the backfield. I think there's running backs to be had to create some more depth to your running back room. We'll see how aggressive they are, but I think you get like a Jerome Ford for like pennies, honestly. And we'll see what they do on that spot. But I think on the defensive spot, I think an edge may be something you could go with. And there's different tiers of players that are going to be available, whether it's an Arden Key who's kind of, won't cost you as much. And then I'm being told that just as of last night, one of those guys in Miami is going to be moved. That's almost becoming certain, whether it's Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips. But you have some teams like the Niners and the Eagles and maybe the Colts that could be interested in edge guys. I do think, though, they're looking to buy much more than we would have assumed maybe a few weeks ago. Yes.
Okay, trick or treat. Final one here, James.
Okay.
The Patriots should be looking to add receiver help at the deadline. We know what Drake Maye's done. We know what the cast of characters, at least their history, has been around him. Kayshon Boutte's having a great year. Will that keep up? Will Stephon Diggs remain healthy? So, trick or treat, the Patriots should be looking to add a receiver.
I'm going to say treat. And I don't even know if I was supposed to buzz in during this game, but I've really enjoyed it. I don't have a buzzer, but I've really pretended to enjoy that there is a buzzer here for me to hit. And the reason I'll say this is I do a show with Steve Smith Sr., who is just, I think, one of the best receiver evaluators that are out there. And we did our mid-season board of some of these receivers that are coming out. And this isn't like a class we've seen in the past, Phil. So I put that into the equation as well, because I think you're going to need to improve the room in one capacity or another. And halfway through this year, I don't think we have a lot of like, the best receivers in college football aren't coming out in this draft. They're coming out in the following draft. Yeah, Jeremiah Smith, let's go. But at the same time, if you can get, say, like a Chris Olave, who I don't think's fully available, Phil, but like that would be in the bucket of what I said, where you can get him for now and for the future and get him the new contract. And like, could you get a player that's going to help you for time moving forward? I think the Giants were a little bit in that thinking before the last 2 weeks, where we get a compliment to Malik Neighbors in 2026, who's helping us now. I think they could look in that vein. I really think they could. And I think Rashid Shaheed is going to be on the move, certainly. And he's got that speed, that downfield threat. But I do think, like, we do have to give credit to who's there. And you mentioned Boutte, and you mentioned what's going on. I know the reps and the time that these guys have spent together to kind of build up that trust. And you see who Drake goes downfield to, right? You see who he likes to look to. That's a trust thing, and that's for, that's because of that was built in a certain direction. But I would think it's something you should look at. But like I said earlier, are they building this thing the right way? And I send it back to you with a question. Are they building this in a manner in which they still want to make sure they have the capital moving forward as at the start of this? And I mentioned the price tag for some of these receivers could be, do you want to give up a third? Do you think Vrabel and company want to give up a third next year?
I think they're going to be reluctant to do that, quite frankly.
Yeah,
I think they just
Yeah.
look at those picks that they have, and they look at the quarterback that they have, and they understand he's going to be here for a long, long time. And to build something sustainable, all the way from ownership on down, they understand this is going to eventually have to be done through the draft. So I think they're going to be reluctant to part with those picks. The third round question is a good one because I think it's sort of right on the line. But if the right guy becomes available and you think it's going to be something that could put you over the top, I do think Mike Vrabel, I think he's got that aggressiveness bone in him in terms of wanting to pull that trigger to make them as good as they can be for this year. So we'll see. It's going to be it's going to be a fun deadline for sure, even if it's not as splashy as last year's. James Palmer.
I think you are competing real quick. I think you are competing with teams that don't have the window the Patriots have. Steelers, interested in receivers. You have a very small window with Aaron Rodgers. Bills, you have Josh Allen, obviously he's a great player, but what's your Super Bowl? You know what I mean? Like, your window is different than some of the other teams you're competing with maybe for these same players at that position.
It's true. And it's always a fascinating discussion.
They may overpay them.
Right. And is the window even more open this year than it will be in future years for the Patriots because of what's happening with the Bengals or what's happening with the Ravens? Do you look at this year and say, we might have to strike while the iron's hot here and really go out and try to blow somebody away, make that move, and see if we can make things happen, even if it's earlier than we anticipated in our organizational arc? So that, to me, is the big question for them.
We got good sooner. What a terrible thing.
It's a good problem.
Man.
Good problem for them to have. Hey, James Palmer, it's always a treat to have you on the Next Pats podcast. Buzzer or no buzzer, my friend. You are the best. Find him on 89 with Steve Smith, Scoop City, Bleacher Report. He's everywhere. He's the best. James, thanks again.
Oh, no problem, buddy.
Coming up on the Next Pats podcast, we're talking who's next in this 2026 NFL draft class. We've got a bruising offensive lineman and a lightning fast receiver from the SEC to talk about. We're also taking your mail. It's all coming up next on Next Pats. Let's talk some 2026 NFL draft, shall we? This is our Who's Next segment, and we're going to focus on the offensive side of the football this week, especially after talking so much about Drake Maye and his success with the deep ball. Well, what do you need in order to push that football down the field? You need to be protected. And so what the Patriots might be able to do in the spring is add another piece to their offensive line to give Drake Maye all the time he needs back there to sit back and launch that thing like a javelin deep down the field. If the Patriots want to move Jared Wilson, rookie this year, starting at left guard, back to center, which was his position at Georgia, that would leave an opening at left guard. Now we have an idea on how to fill that thing. How about Olai Vavenga Ioane from Penn State, 6'4", almost 330 pounds. This man is an absolute tank. He will run you over, not only in power schemes where you can pull the card, kick those defenders outside, or lead them up to the second level. Penn State's also used him in motion to absolutely obliterate defensive ends with a head of steam. He's also versatile, which I think Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel would appreciate here in New England. 1,600 snaps at left guard, but also almost 300 snaps at right guard, and then he's played almost 30 snaps across both tackle positions and center. So he has a little bit of experience just about everywhere. He would be a guard primarily at the next level, but you love to see that size and that kind of athleticism and that willingness to play a variety of different positions just in case you need somebody to fill in somewhere else in a pinch. Now, over the course of the season, he has been dominant. 175 pass block snaps, 0 sacks allowed, 1 pressure allowed, and according to Pro Football Focus, a elite 92.0 pass blocking grade. So, Olai Vavenga or Vega Ioane, come on down in the spring. The Patriots could use that kind of size, that kind of toughness on their offensive line, especially if they're looking for a little bit more help on the interior. Let's talk about a receiver next. You know how much we love talking about that position here on Next Pats. And this week, it's KC Concepcion from Texas A&M that we want to focus on. 5'11", 190 pounds. So he may look like a slot to you, but I think in the NFL, he could be used all over the field. He is that dynamic. He is that athletic. And he's been that productive for the Aggies so far this season. 36 catches, 545 yards. That's a 15 yards per catch average and 7 touchdowns. He also has 2 punt returns for touchdowns. Now, I know the Patriots already have Marcus Jones on the roster, the best punt returner in the NFL, but the more you can do, it will only increase Concepcion's value moving forward. And if you're the Patriots and you want to ensure that Drake Maye has a young core around him that is being built up, and you're not sure what the future holds for Stephon Diggs, as good as he's been this season, and you want somebody who can do a little bit of everything and who can be that route runner and can work his way back to the football and be a quarterback-friendly pass catcher in that manner, that looks like KC Concepcion. So whether it's the first round or the second, Concepcion is certainly a name that I would have my eye on come the spring to help the Patriots. All right, let's get to some of your mail, shall we? Posted a mailbag on NBCSportsBoston.com earlier this week. Thanks to all who chipped in. We got a great question here from Kyle to start us off, who asked, what's one move, or is there even one move, that can really put this year's team over the top? Kyle, for me, that addition, this is referring back to something we heard from James Palmer just a minute ago, would be adding on the edge. The Patriots' offense certainly could use an infusion of talent in some different spots, whether it's running back or, in my opinion, receiver, because I think they are still relatively thin at both spots, even after calling Terrell Jennings, the practice squad running back, up to the 53-man roster. But to me, the position that you could add that would potentially move the needle the most for New England would be on the edge of their defense. They have Harold Landry. They have Kayvon Chason. But both guys have dealt with some injury lately. Landry especially, you remember, he suffered a little bit of an ugly ankle injury a few weeks ago, and he's been effective, but not quite as effective as he was early in the season. Since suffering that injury, both Landry and Chason rank in the top 20 among linebackers in pressures this season. So they've been really, really effective at times. It's what comes after them on the depth chart that I would be concerned about if I'm the Patriots. They still have Anthony Jennings. They still have undrafted rookie, friend of the Next Pats podcast, Elijah Ponder. Jelani Tavai, don't forget about him either. He has the ability, at least, to play on the edge. But according to Sumer Sports, the Patriots are 28th in the NFL in pressure percentage. That's even with Milton Williams and Christian Barmore, in my opinion, having strong seasons. I think they could afford to get a little bit more out of that position. So whether it's Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb in Miami, maybe it's Jermaine Johnson from the Jets. A little bit difficult for the Patriots. All three of those names I just mentioned are obviously playing in the division, and so maybe those teams would be reluctant to send them to Foxborough. But if they could get a starting caliber edge defender, that to me could take their defense up another notch and maybe make them even a stronger contender for a real run in the postseason later this year. All right, next question here is from Pats for Life. He asks, was it just me, or did it look like Will Campbell was doing fine solo on Myles Garrett, but struggled when there was a double team? Did the doubles actually hurt the Patriots on Sunday? I think they did. Now, was that the fault of the double team, or was that the fault of the rookie left tackle? The way Mike Vrabel explained it to us soon after the game on Sunday was that Campbell needed to close down the space that was created by those chips. So in the Josh McDaniels offense, you're getting a slam or a jam from a running back or a tight end. And on both sacks, Will Campbell was credited with allowing 2 sacks to Myles Garrett, who had a whopping 5. But on both of those sacks allowed to Garrett, Campbell had help. What he didn't have was a full understanding, it looked like, of how to use that help to best maximize his opportunities to keep Myles Garrett off of Drake Maye. So when you get those chips, instead of continuing to gain depth in your pass set, you have to be able to close down that space so that Garrett feels a little bit more confined in the number of moves that he can throw your way. He is so athletic. He is so flexible. He's so big. Will Campbell's not going to see another pass rusher in the NFL like that one all year long. But it's a good learning experience for him in a win, by the way, to understand if you're getting that chip, whether it's from Ramondre Stevenson, Hunter Henry, or someone else, you want to make sure that you're closing down that space between yourself and your assignment, basically the moment that that chip is applied. You actually saw Will Campbell do that a little bit later in the game, which speaks to the fact that he's getting good coaching on the sideline from offensive line coach, Doug Marrone, and that he's able to take that coaching and apply it on the field. So if there are occasions this weekend, whether it's Jalen Walker or James Pierce, two pass rushers the Falcons just spent first-round picks on this past spring, or maybe it's Leonard Floyd, if he's getting help on occasion, he should understand now how to make the most of that help on a snap-to-snap basis. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast, a Next Pats Spooktacular. Thanks for being with us. Thanks so much to James Palmer as well for sharing as much intel as he was able to on the upcoming NFL trade deadline. We'll be talking trade deadline and much, much more next time on Next Pats. We'll talk to you then.